Economics, Standard 12, Unit 5, Monetary Economics continued. Let us learn today inflation. So both inflation and deflation are they refer to the movement of prices. They have got relationship with prices. So both inflation and deflation refer to the movement of prices in relationship with prices. So in inflation, the value of money falls and prices of goods increases. So too much of money chasing too few goods, says Colvin. Too much of money chasing too few goods. Too much of money chasing too few goods. Too much of money chasing too few goods. Chasing too few goods. From these words, you can easily understand that money is more, but whereas the price of the goods raising high. So too much of money chasing too few goods. Too few goods. In other words, we can say that inflation is the rate at which the general level of prices for goods and services is rising, and as a result, the purchasing power of currency falls. So it is a state of abnormal decrease in the quantity of purchasing power. It is a state of abnormal decrease in the quantity of purchasing power. There are different types of inflation. Based on the types of inflation, we can divide them into two. One is on the basis of speed and another is on the basis of inducement. So the types of inflation based on speed and inducement. Types of inflation based on speed and inducement. Speed and inducement. Another inducement. So under speed, there are four types that very prominent under speed, and we must know that is based on the basis of speed. What are the types of inflation? They are very important. There are four: creeping inflation, walking inflation, running inflation, and galloping inflation. So creeping, walking, running, and galloping inflation. Now what is creeping inflation? From the word itself, we can easily understand that it is a slow moving and very mild inflation. So from the word creeping, we can easily understand that it is a slow moving and very mild inflation. So what are the two types of, that is the types of inflation, the two types are based on the speed as well as based on the inducement. Now let us learn first based on the speed. So based on the speed, the four important inflations are there. The first one is creeping inflation. So based on the speed. So when we just go for based on the speed, on the basis of speed, okay. So just think four important one. First one is creeping. So creeping inflation. So creeping inflation, mild inflation, and from the word itself we can understand it is just creeping and very mild inflation. And the rise in prices will not be much but spread over a long period. It is not perceptible, but spread over a long period. It is not dangerous to an economy. This is also known as mild or moderate inflation. So creeping inflation is mild and moderate. So you have to remember it is mild and moderate, and it is not dangerous to an economy. So that's we have to remember. Second is walking inflation. So walking inflation is a little different from creeping inflation. So walking inflation just goes for the inflationary rate ranges within the one digit. So thus we can just say moderately and the annual inflation rate is in a single digit from 3 to 9%. So working inflation is, that is when prices rise moderately and the annual inflation rate is in a single digit from 3 to 9%. It is called as trailing or working inflation. So once again, working inflation, and the rising price goes slowly in a moderate way. This is very slow, but this is moderate way, and the annual inflation rate is in a single digit. So inflation rate, so the annual inflation rate is just goes up to 3% to 9%. So single digit, in a single digit. So that's what we call it as working inflation, or what we call it as trailing inflation. The third important one is running inflation. So what is running inflation? When prices are rapidly like the running of a horse at a rate of speed of 10 to 20% per annum, we call it as running inflation. So from the word that is running, it just goes high up, and running inflation, and the prices just go high to the rate of 10 to 20% per annum. So it is called as running inflation. So inflation rate is just 10 to 20%. Remember, that is working inflation, and only one single digit, 3% to 9%. But whereas in running inflation, the inflation rate is 10% to 20%. Now, that is, it's like a running of a horse. So creeping, moderate, and then walking, and then running inflation. And another important one, the hyperinflation, is galloping inflation. So it points out that the unmanageably, you cannot manage at all, high inflation, the rates that runs into 2 or 3 digits up to the high level. So the high inflation percentage of the same is almost 20 to 100%. That is from an overall perspective. So just think 10, 20 to 100%. We call it as hyperinflation or galloping inflation. So galloping. From the word you can just understand that it reaches to the high rate. So hyperinflation. And the inflation rate is just from, that's what you just take it as. So inflation rate just goes from 20% to 100. So 20% to 100. So that's we have to remember. So galloping inflation. The first hyperinflation of the 21st century that happened in Zimbabwe. The annual inflation rate happened at the end of April 2007. It just went even above 30%. So that's the first thing that we have just heard of, hyperinflation in the 21st century. Now, besides these four, creeping, walking, running, and galloping inflation, we have the other two important inflations, demand-pull inflation and cost-pull inflation. We know that demand and supply play an important role in deciding the inflation levels in the society. At all points of time, demand and supply are the two important market forces. So if the demand is high for a product, surely supply will be low, and automatically the price of the products increases. So we call it as demand pull. So demand inflation. Do you understand? So, supply will be less, demand will be more, and the price will increase. Demand more, so demand will be high, and the supply less. Supply will less. Automatically what will increase? Price. Price increases high. So this occurs in the demand pull inflation. And the other important one is cost pull inflation. When the cost of raw materials and other inputs rises, inflation results. So demand pull inflation in the consumer part, and that is cost pull inflation on the production part. So the cost of raw materials and other inputs just rises, inflation results. An increase in, that is, wages paid to labor also leads to inflation. So we just think of this, all these types, demand pull inflation and cost pull inflation, and another important one is wage price spiral. That is, it used to explain the effect of relationship between the rising of wages and rising of prices in inflation. So during the time wages rises, wages rise and prices also rise. So salary and wages income is high. Money, the flow of money is high. Too much of money, but very few goods. Supply is less, production is less, rising in prices or inflation occurs. This we can easily see it in a single diagram. So we'll just see that diagram now, and I will explain to you the diagram. This is a simple diagram. You can easily draw it yourself and finding out. Okay, so making use of this. So just put it in the x-axis. So x-axis and y-axis. So y and x-axis years, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You can increase up to 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So up to 10 years. And your years are mentioned in x-axis. And then in y-axis, that is percentage of prices rising. So percentage of prices rise. The percentage of price. Percentage of price rise. Okay, so that's, you have to mention it in the y-axis. Clearly. Okay, percentage of price rises. So percentage of price rise. So that prices rise. Okay. Now we'll just take it from 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and you can just go up to 100. Okay. So you can just make the y-axis higher. So 90 and 100. Okay, so y-axis, and this is x-axis. So horizontal line x-axis and vertical line y-axis, percentage of price rise, and horizontal line x-axis years are mentioned. Just to think of these 5 different categories, you can imagine that. So first one is what we have, creeping. So creeping inflation. So first creeping, and then second. So just you can go up to the high. So second and third and fourth. The fourth galloping. So you just creeping inflation. So creeping inflation. So you can just make it as A, B, C, D. And second, walking inflation. Walking inflation, creeping inflation, running inflation. Running inflation, and the fourth one is galloping. Galloping inflation. So just think of this, how it just reaches to the high level. So that is, you can just see, even up to 18, even up to 100. So creeping, slowly it moves on. Walking, just it goes from one digit, single digit, 3 to 9%. And running, just 2 digits that you can just go for to 10 to 20. But whereas in galloping, 20 to 100. So we now just learned what is inflation and the different types of inflation based on the speed, so on. And let us continue this lesson, that is inflation, types of inflation based on the inducement, tomorrow class.